for strikeouts in a game. 20.
Swung on and driven to deep left. And a high. Not far. Yankees win. Yankees win. Bernie Williams homers deep in the left field seat to lead off the 11th inning on a 1-run finish. And the Yankees beat the Orioles 5-4 to win Game 1 of the American League Championship Series. Burn, baby, burn. He's done it again.
Deep left. There it goes. Stepping into history. He's done it. He has done it. 62. Aaron Judge is the American League single-season home run leader. The AL King. Case closed.
What is going on, baseball fans? Jeremy Ladaquente once again back at it here for the Baseball Banter Broadcast, bringing you our continuation of our series, The State of the Franchise. From championship glory to rebuilding years, every team has a story. And the story we're discussing today is that of the Cleveland Guardians. And with that, I am honored to bring on my guest, Adam. What is going on, man?
How's it going, partner?
Can't complain. It's going to be a good night for this one. So
Absolutely.
Obviously, as a Guardians fan, this has been one of the more underrated teams, in my opinion, in the last several years. But how we like to start this series out is to kind of get a gut reaction on the previous season. So kind of give me your gut reaction on the 2024 campaign for the Cleveland Guardians.
Yeah, I think when you look at the initial reaction from last year, it's overachieve, right? I mean, they were not predicted to do what they did. I think when you look at that lineup and what they produced and how quick they had really took the lead in the Central and never let it go, and making it all the way to the ALCS, right, against the Yankees, where we were in April, I don't think anyone was predicting that, right? No major outlets. Everyone was predicting Twins, maybe even Kansas City to a point to take the Central, and we were just middle of the pack. And like I said, we kind of took charge of it and ran with it and had one of – I mean, I think most fans here in the area would say last year just kind of hit different as a fan. It was fun. It was a scrappy team. It was exciting. And everybody was kind of clinging to it and just riding the wave all the way into the playoffs. And yeah, it was great. I mean, so 2024 was definitely a high. Obviously, it didn't end the way we all want it to, but realistically, I think when we were all watching and looking, it's like you knew they were overachieving. You knew they're doing, quite frankly, what the Guardians do every year. And that's just kind of like a lot of teams out there. That's just how they operate, right? And so when you can get players and teams like that to overachieve, it makes a fun season when you got a bunch of youth and young guys playing together.
Absolutely. Yeah, I felt like the team really kind of embodied the, first-year skipper in Stephen Vogt. I think that they really, that kind of grinder, just go out and be better than what is projected for you kind of mentality. And I think that they really did do that pretty well.
And he surprised a lot of people. And, the way he managed was a grinder style of management, platooning, using different guys in different positions in a random game where you're sitting there going, he's playing where? And it just somehow worked. And, I don't know if that makes him kind of like a mad scientist last year with how that works, and you come into this year and it backfires if he keeps doing it, or if he just knows how to kind of strategize with the talent he has. But last year you had multiple players playing multiple positions, and every single day the lineup was almost a little different. And so that's not always the most common thing to see in Major League Baseball. I don't think a lot of us were certainly used to seeing that all the time, right? And we ended up throughout the season getting names coming up. I mean, they're there for 3-4 games back down, or, names that just came up out of nowhere and kept producing, and all of a sudden you're in the playoffs and you see a guy like John Kinsey Noel, Big Christmas, and some of these guys who really no one, again, in April, May, knows who a lot of these players are. And all of a sudden, he's hitting a game-winning home run. So, like I said, it's a scrappy team. He managed it as a scrappy team. And it was fun. So, yeah.
Definitely a good time. Now, when you look at some of the moves that they made this offseason, I wouldn't say that they were overly active, but I think that they did some interesting things. Obviously, you brought back Shane Bieber, signed Carlos Santana, traded away Josh Naylor, brought in Luis Ortiz, Austin Hedges is back with the squad, Paul Sewald. Of these acquisitions that were made, which one kind of is the one that stands out the most to you, and which one could potentially be an underrated?
Yeah. So, you look at obviously the first and big one, Shane Bieber, right? Making sure that he comes back. Now, he's not ready, nor will he be ready till July, August, give or take, from Tommy John from last year. But he's the big one. Now, in typical, I guess, Cleveland, maybe even some other small markets situations, Bieber's not a long-term solution for us, right? He's going to be out there pitching to get paid this season, a lot like Matthew Boyd did for us last year. And so, when you look at who we brought in and what we've done, like you said, it's not overly active and it really doesn't look that appealing on paper. You end up getting rid of Josh Naylor, who was a 100+ RBI guy, 30+ home run guy, right? You end up losing Andres Jimenez, who's a platinum glove at second base. Now, what you mentioned, Luis Ortiz, that's the big acquisition for us. That's the Guardians' big acquisition, with kind of moving Jimenez through the trade through Toronto, ending up picking up Ortiz through the Pirates on that 3-way trade. He's a guy that they're looking for rotation. And he came up last year, had some promise through Pittsburgh. So that's what the Guardians do, right? They try and find these guys and take them to the next level. And we're always going to bank on pitching. And we're always going to bank on, once those guys kind of hit that Shane Bieber level, now they become really attractive trade material to kind of reset and reboot, right? And so the Yankees, Mets, as we know, Dodgers, these teams, they feed off of that, and we kind of grab behind the scenes. And then in a few years, all of a sudden, this guy that no one knew about when we traded for a player to be named later, or a prospect or whatever, ends up coming up and you're back through. So Ortiz was definitely the big grab out of all this. But did we bring on enough to make up kind of for the losses there? I don't know that I would agree with that 100%, right? But the way they viewed it, our pitching rotation last year was ranked 24th. So you need depth, right? And they needed to kind of tweak that and hope to get something out of that. So grabbing a Jacob Junis and a Paul Sewald to get up into the bullpen, which is already one of the top bullpens, or the top, I should say, last year. Yep. But, bringing on Carlos Santana again for another reunion tour with us, older, right? Listen, Naylor was a very good player last year, but he isn't certainly. He's probably limited at first base in the next few years as well. Almost like what Santana is to a point. Now, Santana got a Gold Glove last year, but 238, right, is what you're looking at when it comes to his batting average last year. 71 RBIs, 23 home runs. So he's performed less than what Naylor did. So you are losing a big bat, you are losing a good glove, but you picked up pitching depth. So sure, that's where the Guardians thrive, is pitching depth and prospects.
For sure. Yeah. Cleveland has been a pitching factory, as it were, for the last, I don't even know how long. Every year you look at it, there's a guy that is just kind of blowing everybody away in that organization. So it's definitely.
Yeah, you have to, right? You have to. They can't afford, and they, even if they could, they wouldn't, but they certainly can't afford a, Juan Soto, 700 million, right? It's not an option in these kind of markets and the way baseball's set up. So they go heavy pitching, they develop it, they bring it through. It, like you said, usually we find that one or two guys that are just dominating, and can we add to that, or will they keep getting better and better? That's what you got to see, right? Obviously, Bieber is that golden goose, and you're hoping he's back in July, August from the Tommy John. You hope he performs really well, and maybe we are in that position where we're making that playoff run, and now he's anchoring it. That becomes more dangerous for us and gives us a better shot. And at the same time, we'll be there banking on the lineup that we put out there.
Yeah, for sure. You mentioned the bullpen, and that's kind of one of the things that I did want to touch on. Cleveland's bullpen was number 1 in baseball last year, but you kind of, let go of some pieces that could have been very important to that bullpen. I think of Eli Morgan going to the Cubs. How does losing a guy like Morgan kind of translate for the fan base?
Yeah, so you lose a couple, but then we added, like we said, Paul Sewald. Right? You added Jacob Junis into the bullpen, hoping to see if they can kind of fill in those spots as well. The bullpen is very interesting for us because last year we were the top bullpen, and we were plowing innings. I mean, plowing innings. And by the time we got to the playoffs, into that Yankee series, I mean, they were burnt. They were spent, right? The starters just did not eat up enough innings for them. And so you get into the end where you've got the best closer in baseball in Clase, and the Yankees are tagging him, right? Because he's not even breaking 100 or getting to that 100 mark anymore because they're just out of juice. But, when you look at it, obviously you got Clase back, and he's going to be in there. You've got Cade Smith, who was the biggest surprise last year in the bullpen, just really impressive in the playoffs. Hunter Gaddis, moving him from starter to bullpen last year, really this will be the first year that he's really had 1 year under his belt from the bullpen, and then coming in here preparing mentally for it. And then you add a couple of extra pieces, and you're hoping, right, that bullpen can carry you. But the main goal with the Guardians this year is going to be getting more production. They have to out of the starters, just because, like I said, starting rotation ranked 24th last year. They couldn't eat up much past. I mean, it wasn't uncommon by the 4th inning at times last year. We're already hitting the bullpen, and in May and June, you're not thinking much about it. In September and October, I mean, the amount of innings they threw, it starts wearing on you quick. So, the bullpen, I think, is going to be fine. Like I said, we always have arms. I just think you're going to need the starting rotation to really kick it up, to eat up more innings, to keep that bullpen fresh.
Now, you mentioned Shane Bieber a couple of times. We know that he's going to be out. Some of the other guys that are listed on the MLB.com injury report, David Fry, Sam Hinges, Trevor Steven, Daniel Esposito. Which kind of of these players is the one that kind of stands out the most to you? Is there another player that you have injury concerns for the year?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest one's David Fry, right? He came out. He was one of those last year out of the blue kind of guys who became a fan favorite, to be honest with you. I mean, the fans loved him, and he was one of those where you might see him at catcher, you might see him at third base, you might see him in right field. He was just kind of everywhere last year, came up clutch quite a bit in some games, big games, everyday games. And he was just a grinder last year. I mean, he would play wherever as long as he could be on the field. And look, you love that. I mean, you want to see that from ball players. I don't think you could get that out of, just any player, right? It's these guys who are scrapping wherever they can become almost everyday players and fill in here and there and become more valuable, right? And David Fry really embodied that last year. So coming in, I mean, he's going to be a DH, right? And so we'll still get him in the lineup, but he's not going to be out there and be able to rotate and field around and kind of do what he did last year. And DH is a different mental approach than an everyday player, right? You think it's easier because, hey, I'm just hitting. I can just concentrate on hitting, but you're cold. You're not loose all the time. It's kind of hard to feel the flow of the game. So it's going to be a completely different thing for him. And so, that Tommy John surgery and how well does that hold up, right? Is he going to be fully prepared, or come April, is he feeling soreness and he's out, and now we're trying to adjust things, right? So between him and Bieber both kind of having the elbow issues, I mean, any other injury really isn't going to matter as much in that regard. You need both of them back. And so just to help the team, and obviously, like we said, Bieber's the big one there.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think that part of, what made Fry stand out so much was that versatility, being able to kind of play all over the field and be able to fill in for, third, first, the corner outfield spots, being able to be a catcher. That provides such a level of versatility that most people don't have, like you said. So not having him fully prepped and ready to go for the whole 162 could be, something a little bit more tedious for the organization to try to figure out. But on the other side of that, just like we mentioned with Bieber, I think that if, that fielding play is kind of delayed a little bit, it can kind of maybe keep him a little bit healthier, maybe get his legs underneath him for the second half, and kind of see how that will translate to the full course of the year.
Yeah, 100%, and we'll see where that goes with him.
For sure. Now, as we kind of go through this series, one of my favorite sections is the X factor, right? So who do you believe is the X factor for the Guardians, and what does that look like and translate to?
So I actually heard this on another podcast I was listening to from another Guardians podcast. And I had something different in mind thinking about that. But after listening to them, I think I agree with them that for us, to me, I think a big X factor for the Guardians this year is going to be Gavin Williams. Gavin Williams is one of those guys that if he can anchor kind of into that second spot until Shane's back, and then when Shane gets in and it's him and it's Tanner Bybee and Gavin Williams is a top three, you have a really formidable top three. I mean, he's got a very live arm. He's throwing 98 miles an hour consistently. He's got good movement on the ball. He struggled last year. He had an injury in spring training, and so I think that just knocked him off course, and he didn't perform great. But if you can get those three all going and motoring through, like I said, eating up innings and doing their thing. And if Gavin Williams starts coming around, I mean, he's a big guy, just a little intimidating on the mound, throwing really hard, throwing good stuff. If you can kind of have those top three and then get the back 2 to 3 guys to fill in and not maybe have to depend on them as much, I think that becomes a big X factor for us in terms of how this season is going to go. Because again, it always runs through pitching with us, right? Everything we do, any kind of success that we're going to have runs through pitching, which is why normally every offseason you're going to hear quite a few fans say, when are we ever going to get the big bat, right? When are we ever going to get the big power bat in the lineup? Because every year we come up short not having that big 40 home runs, whatever it may be, big bat in the lineup. It's just not how they operate. So they operate through the mound. And so to me, I think that becomes the big X factors. There's other guys, obviously, who are important, but they are consistent, right? I mean, I could come on here and say Jose Ramirez is an X factor. But the reality is Jose Ramirez, I mean, we hit the lottery when we got him, right? He's one of the top. Anyone can make an argument for top 10 or better player in Major League Baseball. Top 5, right? And that's where I would put him. And it's a top 5 player who elected to basically cut his value in half to stay here. So, can you call him an X factor? No, he's just him, right? I mean, he's Jose. Yeah, and he's one away from 40-40 last year.
40-40-40 with doubles as well.
Correct. And so he's just, I mean, he's an animal. So is he an X factor? Yeah, he's the most important piece we have on the entire team. I mean, if Jose goes down, I mean, the ship's going down with him, because as he goes, everyone goes. But for me, I already know what Jose is going to do this year, right? I already know he's probably going to be a 6+ WAR player no matter what. So I need to find who's that guy who's really going to step up and do something for us, that I look and go, damn, finally he's arrived. And I think that guy is Gavin Williams, like I said, because we need to find our strength from the mound.
For sure. Now, in my preparation for this series, I kind of had it similar to you with a pitcher, but I think it's Shane Bieber. I think depending on how quickly he can return to the mound and prove whether or not he is the Cy Young caliber guy, Cleveland can use him either in the spot of the starter, in the postseason run, like you mentioned earlier, or if you guys are falling out of it a little bit and he's pitching well, maybe somebody that can get moved by the trade deadline, somebody that can recoup some assets. So for me, that's kind of the avenue that I went for Cleveland. But I think more importantly, if he can be healthy, and Cleveland always finds a way to be in there in terms of the postseason run. So if they can find a way, and especially in this division, to kind of maintain themselves, if he can come back and prove that he's a Cy Young caliber type pitcher that we once saw, that's going to be a huge addition in the second half.
Well, you're right, and like we said, right, he's got a lot of motivation to do so, right? Because he's going to want to get paid, and Bieber is, from everything I can tell and read, he's not going to give the Jose Ramirez discount, right? So there's a high likely chance you're seeing him in like a Dodger blue or something like that at some point, right? And so but yeah, you're right. If he can come in last year, once we got in the playoffs, the starting pitching, again, it had struggled. And then it was almost, the lights got a little brighter on him, right, in the playoffs, and it showed at times. And in fact, really, I think if you look at last year, our strongest pitcher, one could make an argument in the playoffs, was Matthew Boyd. And he was a Tommy John recovery, late signing, right, where everyone's going, what are we signing him and Alex Cobb for? Are they even going to be ready? And then they make their way in, and Alex, I don't think Alex was 100% there with his stuff yet, and it was showing. But Boyd, I mean, he pitched well in the playoffs, and what did he do? He got paid, right, and parlayed that into a 2-year, $30 million contract. So, last year, our best pitcher in the playoffs, he's not even on the team, right? So, but the best pitcher we had all regular season, Tanner Bybee, where does he go this year? Does he take that next step in growth and carry the staff the way that he's expected to do? And when Shane comes back, they fit in together. And like I said, you got a top 3, and we'll wait to see what the back half does with a couple other guys like Ben Lively or Tristan McKenzie, who really struggled last year and struggled with his stuff overall. And I think mentally Tristan was, I just don't think he had any confidence. So, this is another big year for him, that he's going to end up getting another shot to try and break that rotation. But that's the whole reason why Ortiz is here, right? And so they're going to be looking at Ortiz as a 3-4 guy to step in there and do what he was doing in Pittsburgh last year.
Yeah, I agree entirely. Now, when you look at the future of this team and someone that may actually break camp with the team by all, rumors anyway, your top prospect, Travis Bazzana, what can you tell us about him? And if there's any other prospects that you might be a little high on?
Yeah, so I think amongst Guardians fans, our 2 biggest ones, obviously Travis is the big one, right? It's the number 1 draft pick last year. The MLB draft is becoming more popular and talked about and well known, right? And so having the first pick last year kind of created more of that conversation around the area and learning about some of those guys. So obviously Travis is a big piece of the futures puzzle. The other one's going to be Chase DeLauder, who was another one of our first round draft picks a few years back. He's a guy who, I mean, from everything it looks like, from what I can tell and see and read from places, he's ahead of Travis right now in terms of, will he see time and on the big roster this year? He's been a little, I guess, banged up in spring training so far, but he's the outfielder that I think a lot of people are hoping becomes that big bat that you want. Chase, he's a big body. He can bring the power and he can fill a need at right field, which it's a weak link for us right now. We're in spring training now and it's open, right? So there's room there. And I think there's a lot of talk that he's someone that you could maybe see in a month, or maybe you're seeing after the All-Star break, depending on who's in front of him with Noel and Brennan, what they do out there. So, Chase is, I think, a little bit closer. Bazana, everyone wants to see the number one pick. I mean, that's just human nature. Everyone wants to see him. I think he'll start at AA with the Rubber Ducks, Akron Rubber Ducks this year. Most likely he was at single A last year at Lake County, did well. I think he'll progress up there. And in typical Cleveland fashion, they are going to slow play it, just due to everything behind the scenes that works with financials and everything. So I don't know that you see him until like a September call up that keeps him under that threshold of games, that keeps another year of control with him as well. And so I know everybody wants to see him, but my guess is unless second base, which we can talk about, is unknown, unless that becomes some sort of major dumpster fire there and Travis is just really having a heck of a year, I don't see that happening until back end of the season with him.
For sure. Now, you just mentioned second base, so let's dive into it a little bit. With trading away Andres Jimenez, what is the plan, do you think, for the Guardians at second base this year?
Flip a coin. It's like, I don't know. It's, you've got Juan Brito is the name that keeps popping up. He's younger, and he's a name that's popping up. Angel Martinez is another one that was one of those up and down last year in Cleveland, back down to Columbus, things like that. I think it's going to be scraping there to see kind of who can handle that spot. But then I also think you're going to end up seeing some platoon there from, say, a Daniel Schneemann or a Tyler Freeman, who, again, Tyler and Daniel and Fry were all kind of the same style last year. They were platooning in multiple spots. Freeman was playing infield, he's playing outfield. Schneemann doing the same thing, and you're sitting there just going, what's this lineup going to look like, right? You don't know. And so, it sounds like Brito might get the call, but he's an unknown. So it's an unknown spot, right? You can't sit there and say with confidence you're going to replace a platinum glove. And really, when you look at Jimenez last year, I think I was looking at it here today. His batting, his WAR was a 4. I think people looked at him and said his bat ain't great. It's not things like that. But overall, he was still one of the top batting averages on the team. He still produced 70 RBIs, give or take. I think I had it right here. It was when I looked at it here earlier, 63 RBIs, 252 average. So, he produced. Nobody was blowing it up with us last year. We all just kind of, we got our wins off timely hits, right? It was, you needed a hit, all of a sudden, boom, someone came up and Vogt would pinch hit somebody out of the blue, and it's like you got to hit and, score guys. So second base is, like I said, flip a coin and let's see where that goes.
Now, as we always do with this series, I like to get a bold prediction. So what is your bold prediction for the Guardians this season?
I see them going again to the playoffs. I think I do. I'm not going to sit there and say they're going to win it, but I think when you look at everything, the way the team, it's like frustrating that they're good sometimes in a weird way. It's like you shouldn't necessarily always be good, but then like you said, they have, the division is conducive for the ability to make a run into the playoffs. And so I think we see them go back-to-back playoffs, and I don't know that I see them at the ALCS, but listen, the Guardians somehow find ways to, turn dirt into diamonds and prove us wrong. So I'm not going to say they can't do it, but I think a little more things that, if you were a fan last year and you watched the whole season and you watched it play out from April all the way through, I think there was just this feeling of, man, like we're just kind of clicking and things are just going right for us. Like I said, it's a timely hit here, or it's a bunt that worked out, or hey, today we pulled up so-and-so at pitching and he did really well. Ben Lively last year was throwing really strong at the first half, kind of started falling off. But as he started falling off, Matthew Boyd was there picking it up. So it's hard to make all those pieces go in sync every year. But I think they're back in the playoffs this year. And again, surprise most people in the media, because I think majority probably have us third, fourth finishing this year. So the boldest prediction I can say is we will finish above the White Sox. That's my bold prediction.
I think everybody in the league will do that. Yeah. We could probably make a team of everybody that's been on this series with us and get more wins than the White Sox.
Yeah. So we will win more than them for the bold prediction. Yeah.
So with mine, it's a little bit more of what feels like a foregone conclusion, but I think Jose Ramirez goes 40-40 this year. He was just off, and I think, and I said it on I forget what broadcast I was doing for this channel last year, but to me, if they didn't call that last game between the Astros and the Guardians, I think Ramirez wholeheartedly would have got 40-40-40. So I'm calling that he's going to have a chip on his shoulder and he's going to go get it this year.
My only concern is, is he protected enough around him, right? And so, when I look at that kind of stuff too, when you lose Naylor, even though he was frustrating at times with how just sometimes just him swinging is like, oh my gosh, what are you doing? But again, he still provided that threat too. But another big piece that we haven't talked about yet is Lane Thomas, who struggled to adapt with us, but then started finding his groove in the playoffs. And I think he's an important piece this year as well in the lineup. And, Quan, another one of those guys who, he was on a banger up till the All-Star game. He's above 350 hitting, batting, just torching, and then nosedive. So can he keep it up all year, help protect Jose? Where's Jose going to be in the lineup in terms of batting? I think there's some unknowns there necessarily. I would assume he's back into that third spot again, just like he's been. But, who's hitting in front of him now? You lost Jimenez, so I don't know who's going to fill that spot yet. So even the best hitters need a little protection at times. And if he can get some of that, for sure. He just plays the game so hard that you root for a guy like that to get it right. And just because he plays like we all would mentally, right? It's not about the money. He just loves to play the game. So I hope you're right on your prediction.
Yeah, me too. I very much love the way he plays the game. Like you said, he plays how a fan would expect to go out there and play for the love of the game.
You get your money's worth.
Yep. Yeah. So I definitely am pulling for him to go 40-40 this year for sure. Plus, we can then start to put Otani and Acuna behind us with J Rams 40-40.
Yeah. I got a feeling Otani still takes up a lot of the media airspace no matter what. So I think with the Guardians, we'll get a blurb. Ramirez 40-40. Congrats. All right, let's get back to the Dodgers and see what Otani's doing.
Now, as we kind of look through, what do you think is the biggest question facing the organization in 2025?
I just think it's there's multiple pieces, but me first and foremost is, I mean, we talked about second base. I think the other one is right field because it is unknown. You have right now Will Brennan, who I don't think anyone is really thrilled with what he did last year. It was just so. And then you had Noel come up, who was just like swinging like a man whose hair was on fire at anything and everything. I don't even know if he knew if they were calling balls or strikes or if he thought he was just in a batting practice for fun. I mean, if it was 3 feet outside, he was just like trying to arc it. And so, I mean, the consistency from that position, even defensively, neither one of them are strong defensively necessarily either. So, I mean, it's a whole right now, just like second base. But when I look at us and defensively, we did downgrade a little bit just because of right field, like I said, is not settled. And whether that's Chase Stellato coming up this year and all of a sudden he's the man for the job, or Noel really worked hard at plate discipline this offseason and worked more on the outfield. And maybe he did. I was watching a game with him the other day and he actually took a ball that was kind of close, but he would have swung at that last year. So made his case. But I think the other big one, I mean, catcher's such a I don't know what the statistic is there, but I gotta assume between Naylor and Hedges last year, we might have had the lowest producing catching duo offensively. Maybe, I don't even know in how long, but they're just Hedges is our ping pong player. He's a locker room guy. He ain't there for the bat, that's for sure. So you don't have a great bat at catcher unless somehow Bo Naylor matures and all of a sudden he's doing what they hoped he would do. Right field, again, same thing. And second base, I mean, there's gaps there, right? And so what does that look like and how does that come about? But again, it's every time you want to doubt it or question it or anything like that, all of a sudden there's someone in there and it's like, he's working and it works out for us. So
yeah, it's definitely going to be an interesting season to see kind of how it all shakes out. Yeah. So then what on the opposite side kind of is the biggest frustration for the fan base?
I think it's just the realization of how we operate, right? And I don't think that's exclusive to us. I think that's probably more or less the way baseball is set up to a point, right? We can't generate the same amount as the Yankees, right? Or the Dodgers. TV contracts are a lot different, and revenue producing streams like that are different, are a concern. Now, there's always going to be people who get frustrated and say, look, they're all billionaires, they should be able to spend more, right? And I think there are times for that, but when you look at what they do with our front office or how our front office operates and what they put in place, I mean, they produce a winning club. I think I read since, our owner, Larry Dolan, rest in peace, just passed away the other day. But they had to stand there. I think we're like the fourth winningest team since 2000 when he took over. So, that is a success. That is a consistent and stable. But the frustration is always going to be just like last year when you get to the ALCS you probably just don't have the horses to finish it. And at some point, Lady Luck catches up to you, right? And when you had to go against Judge and Soto and all those guys, and all of a sudden your pitching doesn't look as dominating, and all of a sudden momentum's swinging at New York, and you got this young, youthful team. And I think we're one of the top 2 or 3 youngest teams again this year.
Yeah, I believe so.
They're not ready to react to that yet, right? And they're not ready to get to that point. And so I think there's always going to be that frustration of, do we have the ability to get to the next step? And as a front office and ownership, it's like, don't you just want to go for it one time, right? It's like you're in the ALCS last year. You can see you had 90 plus wins. You had a lot of momentum. Could you add that one extra pitcher? Can you keep Jimenez, even though he's got a little bit larger contract? Could you have added that extra bat into right field? Or if you were going to get rid of Naylor, can you make us a swing for another bigger name or another bigger bat? But again, that's going to be one of those things where Santana might break out again this year, and all of a sudden he looked like he did 5 years ago. You don't know, but we always seem to be scrapping pieces together, right? It's like hodgepodge, a couple of things. And by June, July, and August, it's looking good and it works out. But in the beginning, you're going, here we go again, right? And so, last year we bring on 2 pitchers that, like I said, Cobb and Boyd, Tommy John surgery, right? Coming off of that. But hey, we got a great deal on them. Hopefully they worked out. And they did. And I know we're doing that again this year. I can't remember. Means, I think it is, right? Coming off of injury, and another one maybe it was Means that we signed, and he's not even really going to be ready till next year. So it's just, we all want to be like the bigger clubs. Like I had conversations with people last year. I would never expect us to sign a Juan Soto, right? But why don't we try and take a run at a guy like whoever our Vladimir Guerrero is, right? Or someone who, and obviously Jose was that guy, and we were fortunate because we also had Lindor, and Lindor wasn't as nice about wanting to stay, right? He was like, yeah, that's cool. Peace. I'm out. Half the value. Yeah, no. So it would be nice, but what would that look like if you had Jose and Lindor together and kept that, I mean, there's so many good pieces we have had over the years that it's like, if you could have kept kind of those cores, you ask yourself, what could that have been? And it can be frustrating, but then you get into the season and you see we're winning, we're fun, but at the end, we're probably not going to just be able to get over the hump. And that gets frustrating. And look, I'm not a baseball owner. I'm not the billionaire. I'm not in charge of the finances. What do these teams really make and through the revenue and everything? I don't know, but I just feel like I would want to try and go for it one time, just to see, if I go all in, what happens. But that's just not how they operate. So we live with it.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, when you think back to some of the, more historic teams from the past for the Guardians / Indians, think back to Manny Ramirez, Jim Thome, Albert Bell, and even when you went through the run against the Cubs in 2016, how close you came to winning it all. Had
Correct.
they gone in a little bit extra, a little bit more, you had.
And I think that's where our frustration is what you said with the Thome Ramirez days and those teams. Those were teams we were spending money. That was a prior owner, right? He was throwing contracts in to get guys. I mean, when you look at all the guys we had, it was Matt Williams or Oral Hershiser, David Justice was on the team, right? Robbie Alomar came over onto the team. Those teams were built to win and win it all. And we made it twice, came up short. That's a debate for another day on like 97 and how we handled the pitching, but they went for it, right? And so when Dolan's took over, struggled in the beginning, then kind of found their groove on what their process was, which is what we've talked about, is kind of hit the farm hard, build up the arms, use them as long as you can. And then their value is up here. Let's get more of those prospects, and let's hope we hit pay dirt with that second baseman we traded for 3 years ago, or whatever the case is. And so that just goes back to like where it is with like a Shane Bieber, right? So if we get to that all-star break, give or take, and he's ready to go and he starts pitching well, value's up, and so most likely we're going to see him on a different team if he's pitching really well. And that's just the way they operate. So certainly frustrating. I know we're not alone. There's multiple teams out there in the same boat. And I do think for the way that we do it, which is like cheaply competitive, we're one of the best teams to do it that way.
For sure.
But I would like to see a happy medium between, say, Yankees and Dodgers, Mets style, compared to that kind of like so many other teams that are in that 220 mark, right? I mean, you look and you see Detroit spent some more this year. Yep. Minnesota's got a bigger payroll. Kansas City's got a bigger payroll. Just south of us, Cincinnati, I think their payroll just dropped a little bit, but they're right where we are to a little bit bigger payroll with some other guys coming in. We don't always want to see us sitting 25th payroll, get 26, because it's like, come on, man, there's got to be someone there. Our attendance was up, I think they said 13% last year. So reward the fans for showing up a little bit more and bring that piece in,
Yeah. Now, as we kind of look and speak about a potential piece, when you think about this offense and what it's capable of, where would you kind of grade it out for this year?
I mean, I don't know. I would probably still put it. It's so hard because we've talked about all these unknowns that it's hard to figure where they'd go. I mean, I want to say there's room to be a B grade for the offense, but it just has a lot of factors to depend on for it to be there, right? Like we talked about, Steven Kwan's got to stay consistent. Jose's got to do his thing. Does Lane Thomas kind of hit a groove? I mean, if you get those three guys kind of moving and grooving, do other guys step up? Does Carlos Santana look like he did 4 or 5 years ago? Does Big Christmas have plate discipline where all of a sudden he is that home run bat and he's on pace for 40 home runs and 100 plus RBIs in right field? Yeah, then all of a sudden, I mean, Guardians look really smart in what they did in terms of putting this together. But it also has the ability to kind of not showing off, not falling behind, right? Kind of that C grade. And I think until we see those pieces, I mean, I put it at that B minus C plus level of, can they do it again like they did last year? It took a lot of things going right for it to click. Does it happen again?
Yeah, so that's kind of where I have it. I have it at a C plus in my preparation for this series. I think that, like you said, what kind of protection is Jose Ramirez going to get? What are you going to see out of Elaine Thomas that you picked up last year? What are they going to do now that they've moved on from Jimenez? Is Steven Kwan going to be, kind of more consistent and somebody that you can plug in and have that kind of Luis Arraez type approach where you can know what you're getting consistently night in, night out with, that hit tool. So for me, it's kind of in that same boat where it's a little bit of a question, kind of average right now, but with room for improvement for sure.
And like I said, we still have the catching position that is very much, I mean, Naylor batted, I think, like 201 and Hedges was 150-ish, 152 last year, right? I mean, there was basically no production out of that position. So when you look at that, even though that position's consistent with who's coming back, it still didn't produce last year. So now you got catcher, second, right field, all three in question. We just got to see how that plays out.
Now, as we look on the opposite side, how would you grade the pitching?
I mean, I put the pitching at a B plus right now. Very much with the ability to get to that A level. Obviously, the bullpen is still very strong. And so that alone carries it in the B range just for what they did last year. And I think they'll be just as effective this year. Again, Cade Smith, by the time he got into the playoffs, was a totally different pitcher. I mean, he transformed into a confident animal out of the bullpen. Clase had his confidence shaken, but I think that was more just based off of being burnt out by the end of the year. So I think just those two guys together with Hunter Gaddis and some of these other guys, the bullpen keeps you at a B automatically. The rotation last year, like I said, ranked 24th in baseball starting rotation. So there's some drop off there, right? That the bullpen carried all the weight for us last year. It wasn't consistent and it wasn't very good from the starting pitching all year. Now you had a guy pick up here, kind of clock you into 6 innings. We were celebrating, right? I mean, hey, he made it to 6 innings. All right. It's probably not a confidence booster there on your starting pitching. So what does that look like this year? Like, just like the beginning of this podcast, if you were my X factor with Gavin Williams, what does he look like this year? Is he coming out just with really good stuff and making it up to that 7th inning, late 6th inning, 7th inning? Can Bybee do it again? He did it last year. Can he put 2 years together like that? I hope so, right? And so with some questions still a little bit with the starting rotation, but having such a good bullpen, I think that's kind of where I end up grading kind of B level with the ability to get to A.
So I'm a little higher on your pitching staff. I have it at an A- right now. The bullpen, as we know, is going to be an absolute monster without a doubt. And I think that you're probably going to get more out of that rotation, right? Because I feel like it can't be as bad as it was last year.
Right. It can't get worse. That is true.
So,
that is true.
In the acquisition of Luis Ortiz, who I think is going to be a big addition in the middle of that rotation, I think Tristan McKenzie is going to have to find it. The stuff is there. If he can just put a little bit more togetherness in that delivery and kind of being able to repeat that, kind of, get those mechanics in line, I think that he has the makings of a guy who could be a very high-end type of pitcher. Plus, as you said, the thoughts with Gavin Williams kind of taking that next step. If Bybee can take that next step and kind of be consistent like he was last year, I think there's a lot of room for upside with this pitching staff. But it all comes down to the bullpen.
There is one other guy that we haven't talked about much that is going to be pushing possibly either up against Tristan, maybe get into it, maybe not, we'll see. And that's Joey Cantillo, who played some last year, was young, spot duty some, but another potential starter who, with more reps, more confidence, what does he look like? Is he building through an entire season as well? And does he become a legitimate starter and option for us? But he's another young, very, very lively arm with good stuff, but it's still a little bit unproven at the major league level. So what does that look like for him coming into this year? And obviously that's where spring training focus so far is certainly being focused into that, right? Is they got to find a rotation, or at least the looks of one, to get the season started. Where's it going to be? All indications are Tristan McKenzie is going to certainly get the benefit of the doubt to try and really get the best look to see if he's ready. And Ben Lively, again, who was a workhorse up through the All-Star break, kind of fell off. So there are options there. And the rotation does have the ability to have the depth and stay strong throughout the year. They just gotta do it. And it starts at the top with, like I said, I believe, at least in my opinion, kind of Bybee, Williams, and Ortiz to start with Bieber coming back and getting, two of those guys on the back half, because for any postseason success, that's where it's got to start for us.
100%. Now, as we kind of round out here, we always look at the divisional rankings, right? So Pacoda has the Guardians coming in third in the division with 80 wins, falling under 500. Fangraphs has them in fourth with a 77 win total, again under 500, which to me is baffling when you consider how much this team has done with so little over the last several years, and how much how similar the team is still continuing to be based on what they've done in the last few years. Where do you see the Guardians finishing, and what does that win total look like for you?
I mean, it's always Ohio against the world around here, I swear. Yeah, listen, and that's common, right? We always see third, fourth, and they're Minnesota won. I mean, the reality is Minnesota doesn't really answer that call often up top. So to me, I mean, I have us this year just with the unknowns second. I think there's going to be a surprise, and I think Detroit may be the one that takes the division this year. There's a lot of momentum with them. They were very difficult in the playoffs last year. They got Flaherty back. They've got some pieces. I think they've got a really good team as well. I really think it's a wide open. I mean, let me say that. I think the division is wide open. I mean, I don't necessarily ever want to bet against the Guardians. I think they have the ability to win the division. Do we have the roster and consistency to win back-to-back division championships? I mean, the way the season played out last year, it's hard to sit there and say, oh, we're going to kill this division again like we did last year. I don't see that happening. I see really all four teams. It may come down to the wire. I mean, I think they're all very similar in what they can do. They all have different strengths. And for all the bashing that we hear about the AL Central, right? I mean, 3 teams made the playoffs last year out of that division, right? So they're playing better baseball, I think, than even what the national media will necessarily give it credit for. And a lot of sites, I think the division itself, obviously the White Sox got some work to do, but the other 4, I think, is going to be a slugfest all season long. And it's going to be interesting to see who comes on top. But I just feel like last year there was a lot of that momentum with Detroit. And I mean, Skubal is an unreal pitcher, right? And they've got some good pieces. And Flaherty came back, like I said, from the Dodgers, which, I mean, what a great move that was, right? And so I think Detroit becomes a surprise this year in terms of maybe taking it when so many are talking about Minnesota or maybe even saying Kansas City. I mean, Bobby Witt Jr. is unbelievable, but it's hard to say. I mean, right now I'm going to place him at second because we do have some unknowns. Like I said, I think we do have a hole at second base. We've got a hole at right field. Got that questionableness at catcher a little bit, just in terms of what does that offensive production look like. And got some pitching, right? I mean, starting rotation, like you said, it can't get any worse most likely, but it still has to improve a little bit, not stay kind of flat from last year. So with some of those questions, that's where I'm putting them.
Yeah. So for me, I'm much higher. I'm much higher in the win total compared to Pacoda and Fangraphs. But I do think that it's going to be a difficult division, and I think that the Guardians are going to land in third, right? So, but I think that it's going to be very similar to last year, that it's going to be the Central kind of, fighting against each other and beating up on the White Sox to kind of push themselves again towards that wild card.
Which we somehow struggle to do, by the way. I don't understand that, but yeah, keep going.
So I think the Guardians are going to end up in that like 85, 86, maybe 87 wins. I think that the division itself is going to be super close. I think 3-4 games tops separate the 1 through 4 in that division. Because I really believe that there's so many similarities, as you said, between all 4 of those teams in that division. Minnesota gets a lot of credit, but I think that they have so many injury concerns year in and year out that kind of knocks them back towards the pack. And I think that you guys have so many just surprises that tend to happen year in and year out that kind of get overlooked. And your star player is, in my opinion, one of the most overlooked superstars in our game. Aaron Boone got really mad when people said he was underrated because everybody in baseball knows how good he is. but
Right.
he's overlooked is probably the better way to put it.
Yes.
This is definitely a superstar in the game. Everybody that watches him knows exactly how good he is. So it's not necessarily underrated, but overlooked. And I think that when you have a player of that caliber as the leader of the club, and who's shown, that he wants to be with the organization, he wants to push them to get to that next level, I think you can't count that out. So like I said, I think that the division is going to be super tough. I think you guys are going to get to that 85, 87 win range, but I think it's going to be super close between all of the teams. But the way I kind of have it pegged out is with the Guardians coming in third, but I think that they're still going to be deep inside of that wild card battle, and it's going to be an interesting way the season turns out.
And I'm with you there. That's kind of where I had them placed for in terms of a potential wild card spot, right? Is where, I see them potentially going this year. Win total, probably, I would agree with that again, but we could see them exceed that like they did last year, right? And go 90 plus, and all of a sudden we're going, well, I shouldn't have doubted them. But, again, the division is strong in terms of at least lining up the ability of each team kind of talent wise and where they are. I think it is a battle. So it's going to be interesting, but I do see us in the postseason again this year, hopefully. But it may come down to the final weekend. You just, it may be real close to the vest here by the end to see who gets in. And look, that's what's fun, right? That makes baseball fun when you're in the middle of a race and you're in the back half of that season and every game counts, every game matters. That makes it really fun. I think we're going to see that. And I think there's multiple divisions that are going to see that. I think the AL East is going to see that same exact kind of situation play out as well. So I think baseball is in for a fun season overall up to that point, getting into the playoffs, and then see what happens.
So now, as we kind of bring it to a close using the title of this series, what do you believe is the state of the franchise for the Guardians?
Yeah, I think we are. Listen, the Guardians front office does such a great job, right? Chris Antonetti, Mike Chernoff together, the constraints they are given. Constraints is, I guess, the best word, but the budget they are given financially and what they do every single year to kind of put us in play, at least in terms of, hey, we're in the conversation for the most part, fairly consistently, it is something to tip the cap to. It is great. Like we talked about, frustrating, but great, because there's other teams we see that become dumpster fires when the strategy doesn't work out. 1 year they look good, next year they are, Marlins style, right? And all of a sudden really struggling. So, we do a great job there. They do awesome. We added some arms. We lost some experience on defense and at the plate. We just need guys to step up. So I think where we are as a franchise is we are a consistent team for the AL Central. We line up well for the AL Central. I think we're a playoff team. I think we're in the wild card this year. I think we have a lot of these guys who we've talked about for the extent of this podcast who I'm telling you are kind of questionable, but by June, July, all of a sudden we're looking at and go, yeah, Gavin Williams been dominating. He's got his stuff this year, or, things like that. Or, hey, Lane Thomas, what a great move that was last year. Even though at the trade deadline last year, we were all going, that's the best we could do was Lane Thomas. We couldn't go get that bigger name. Lane Thomas is the guy. Right. Now, we all ended up really loving Lane by the end of the year when he hits that home run in the playoffs, and, the whole town loves him all of a sudden. But at the time, that's our big name. That was the big move right there for the playoff push. So it's just not in our DNA, the way that our organization is set up to make a splash. We are putting a lot of trust into guys who, and Atlanta Braves fans not really going to know that guy, because why would he, right? until all of a sudden, like we said, you get to July and it's like, well, they're winning. Who's on their team? And so, but I think that's they make it work, even when a lot of us get frustrated and discount them, or even our own fan base says, yeah, they're not going to make it. They make it work. They're in the playoffs. Last year was a great example of that we didn't have those expectations of what they did. So I just see them surprising people again, like they always do. And all of us who doubt it kind of grumble. We love it. And then we get to the offseason and go, he did it again. They got in again, even though we all say they got to do something to improve. So they just an extremely well-run organization, even though it can be frustrating due to the financial constraints. And that's not even necessarily, I think Major League Baseball ends up at some point, they got to do something right to help navigate, I guess, a little bit more in terms of looking how the NFL operates and things like that with revenue streams and stuff. So we'll see.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be an interesting season, and for a team that is consistently overlooked, despite how good they've been over the last several years. But Adam, I want to thank you for joining me. Let everybody know where they can find you to be able to get more of your thoughts and feelings on the Guardians.
Yeah, you can just get me at Twitter, just at Bonvo1002 is where I'm at usually. Always scrolling through there, always looking at content, always checking up on baseball. I love the game. I love following the teams, love following spring training. So we're just I'm ready to go. Listen, it's 45 degrees and raining. All right. Give me some baseball. Let's get the season going. All right.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Absolutely. But again, I want to say thank you for joining me. It's been a fun conversation. Be able to talk Guardians baseball. Now, for those of us joining on the YouTube side of things, make sure you hit that subscribe button and that bell for post notifications, as it does continue to help us build this community. If you are checking us out as well, make sure you check out the description and our link tree, where we have our merch store, sponsor links, and we have a new affiliate link in there with Topps. So if you are a sporting card collector, trading card collector, make sure you check out our link tree, as it does help us continue to build our relationship with Topps and Fanatics. So definitely check that out. If you're listening on the audio side of the platform, make sure you leave a 5-star rating and review, as it does help us continue to grow and move up the algorithm. So once again, I want to thank you, Adam, for joining me here on the State of the Cleveland Guardians franchise, and I will catch you all on the next video.